The internet didn't just flinch, it froze. One sentence, one claim, and suddenly the entire timeline felt radioactive. Karlissa said the word nobody was ready to hear, and within minutes, Chrisean Rock went nuclear. Not confused, not calm, furious. The kind of fury that tells you a line wasn't just crossed, it was obliterated. Because this wasn't petty family drama. This wasn't a shady comment about relationships, or money, or clout. This was a claim involving a child, a claim so heavy it sucked the oxygen out of the jokes, the memes, and even the trolls. The internet loves chaos, but this made people sit up straight. Screenshots spread faster than explanations. Clips replayed like evidence. Comment sections turned into digital courtrooms where everyone suddenly had an opinion, a theory, and a verdict. And Chrisean didn't whisper back. She fired back, loud, emotional, and filtered. This wasn't reality TV anymore. This felt like a family fracture detonating in public, with no rewind button and no clean ending. And once you hear how this claim dropped, how Chrisean reacted, and how the internet spiraled afterward, you'll understand why fans are saying this moment changed the entire dynamic forever. The moment that claim hit the air, the internet didn't gasp. It locked up, like when a room goes quiet because someone just said the one thing you're not supposed to say out loud. Karlissa didn't tease it, didn't cushion it, didn't soften the edges. She dropped a sentence that felt radioactive. And suddenly the family drama everyone treats like a reality show turned into something far heavier. This wasn't about messy relationships or clout anymore. This was about a child. And once that line is crossed, there's no undo button. Karlissa has never been subtle. She's never played the quiet background role. She speaks like someone who believes silence is weakness and shock is strategy. And when she made that claim about Chrisean Jr., it didn't matter how she intended it. The internet heard what it heard, and it ran with it at full speed. Screenshots flew before context could catch up. Clips were reposted with captions that screamed urgency, fear, and accusation, even when nobody actually knew what was true. Within minutes, Chrisean Rock fired back. Not calmly, not diplomatically. She snapped in a way that made it clear this wasn't entertainment for her. This wasn't banter. This wasn't family shade. This was a mother hearing something she considered unforgivable. Her response came fast, emotional, and loud enough to tell everyone watching that a nerve had been hit straight through the bone. And fans noticed immediately. Chrisean can yell, she can rant, she can spiral for sport. But this reaction felt different. This sounded defensive in a way that doesn't come from clout chasing. It came from fear mixed with rage, the kind that makes you stop caring how you look and start caring only about shutting something down. The internet split like glass under pressure. One side dragged Karlissa instantly, accusing her of weaponizing speculation and crossing a moral line that shouldn't even be visible, let alone spoken on publicly. People said there are things you argue about and things you keep private, and a child's health sits firmly in the category you never touch. The other side did what the internet always does when it smells chaos. It started asking questions it had no right or qualification to ask, and once those questions appear, they don't disappear quietly. They linger, they mutate, they turn into narratives even without proof. Context made everything worse. This family dynamic has been a public, slow-motion explosion for years. Arguments have never stayed private. Subtweets have always doubled as statements. Every disagreement eventually becomes content whether anyone wants it to or not. But this claim didn't feel like escalation. It felt like rupture, like someone tore open a topic that was never meant to see daylight. Old clips resurfaced instantly, dragged into the conversation whether they belonged there or not. Moments that once felt random were suddenly reframed as signs. That's the most dangerous phase of any online scandal. When hindsight becomes a weapon and coincidence starts getting treated like evidence, Chrisean's response only fueled the fire. She didn't hedge, she didn't soften her words. She pushed back hard emotionally And without concern for optics, fans interpreted that into opposite ways. Some saw a mother defending her child against something she believed was harmful and reckless. Others saw someone panicking because a narrative had slipped out of her control. And once the internet starts debating why someone reacted instead of what was said, the story stops being about the original claim. It becomes about trust. People questioned Karlissa's motives immediately. Was this concern? Was it bitterness? Was it retaliation dressed up as information? Nobody knew, but everyone decided anyway. And Karlissa's history of public commentary didn't help her case. When someone is known for saying everything out loud, people assume nothing is off-limits. At the same time, Chrisean's past responses to concern were dragged back into the spotlight. Her habit of brushing off criticism, reframing questions as hate, and joking through serious moments suddenly looked different under this new lens. Supporters who once defended her aggressively found themselves quieter, not because they stopped supporting her, but because the situation felt heavier than fandom. The scariest part wasn't the claim itself. It was how fast the internet accepted the idea that it might be true without evidence. That's how dangerous narratives are born, not from facts, but from repetition. Once something is repeated enough, it stops sounding hypothetical and starts sounding familiar, and then there was the silence from everyone else. No quick clarifications. No authoritative voices stepping in to shut speculation down. Just reactions layered on reactions, each one louder than the last. That vacuum created space for panic to grow unchecked. Chrisean's anger didn't calm the situation. It intensified it, not because she was wrong to respond, but because emotional responses don't satisfy an audience trained to demand explanations. Her fireback drew a line, but it didn't close the conversation. It widened it. Because now the story wasn't just about what Karlissa said. It was about why she said it, how Chrisean responded, and what everyone wasn't saying out loud. This wasn't a petty family argument anymore. It was a public fracture unfolding in real time, with thousands of strangers arguing over implications they didn't fully understand. And once a situation involving a child becomes public debate, there is no winning. There is only damage control and fallout. By the end of that first wave, one thing was clear. This claim didn't just stir drama. It permanently changed the tone of the conversation around this family. And whatever came next was guaranteed to be louder, messier, and far more unforgiving than anything that came before. Once that claim was out in the open, the internet didn't ask for clarification. It assumed urgency. Timelines turned into emergency broadcasts, where context took a back seat to emotion. People weren't scrolling anymore. They were hovering. Every repost felt heavier than the last, like the same sentence was gaining weight just by being repeated. And repetition online has a way of turning speculation into something that feels disturbingly solid. TikTok morphed into a digital courtroom overnight. Clips were stitched together by creators who sounded confident enough to make uncertainty feel illegal. Nobody waited for confirmation. Nobody paused to verify. They spoke in absolutes because absolutes perform better than caution. Comment sections filled with declarations disguised as concern, and concern disguised as authority is the internet's favorite costume. Memes followed because chaos always invites comedy. But this time the jokes landed sideways. The humor felt nervous, almost apologetic, like laughter used to break tension rather than create it. Every attempt to lighten the mood was met with scolding replies insisting this wasn't funny, which only amplified the discomfort. When even the trolls don't know how far to go, the situation has officially crossed into dangerous territory. Influencers entered the conversation carefully. Postang vague reflections that pretended to be general but were timed too perfectly to be accidental. Quotes about protecting children, choosing privacy, and drawing boundaries flooded feeds in clusters. No names were mentioned, yet no one was confused. Subtweets became the language of choice, because saying everything without saying anything is the safest way to comment when lawyers might be watching. Screenshots of likes and unfollows began circulating like currency. People tracked who engaged with which posts as if alliances were forming in real time. A single heart emoji under the wrong caption sparked entire threads analyzing intent, loyalty, and guilt by association. The internet loves patterns, even when it has to invent them. Meanwhile, commentary channels switched gears instantly. Titles got darker. Thumbnails leaned harder into shock. Words like disturbing, crossed the line, and too far dominated feeds. Everyone wanted to be first, not accurate, because accuracy doesn't trend as well as urgency, and every new upload stacked more heat onto a situation already burning. Public opinion didn't flip. It tilted, slowly at first, then all at once. Supporters who once defended Chrisean with full confidence started qualifying their statements. They didn't withdraw support, they softened it. "I'm on her side, but" became the most common phrase online. That but did more damage than any insult ever could. Karlissa's name became a lightning rod. Some accused her of recklessness, saying there are claims you never float publicly, no matter how angry or concerned you are. Others framed her as someone just speaking her truth, a phrase the internet uses when it doesn't know what else to say. Motives were debated endlessly, even though nobody actually knew them, and Chrisean's reaction stayed under a microscope. Every word she posted after that was weighed, measured, and interpreted 10 different ways. People analyzed her tone like it was a lie detector test. To angry meant she was hiding something. To calm meant she was coached. There was no correct response left. Once the internet decides a situation is suspicious, every reaction becomes evidence of something. The comparisons came next, because the internet loves a familiar template. Past celebrity family scandals were dragged back into the spotlight. Even when they didn't fully apply, names were mentioned. Old situations resurfaced. And suddenly this moment wasn't just a singular conflict. It was being framed as part of a larger pattern that scared people more than the original claim ever did. Wild analogies took over the discourse. People said this felt like reality TV with the laugh track ripped out, like a live episode nobody edited, like watching a slow-motion crash where everyone sees it coming but can't stop staring. Dramatic, yes. Effective, completely. Because exaggeration thrives when information is incomplete. Even people who wanted to defend both sides struggled to stay neutral. The conversation had become too emotionally charged for balance. Attempts at reason were drowned out by louder, more confident voices insisting they knew what was really happening. And confidence, even when baseless, is persuasive online. What made this stage so volatile was how fast the story stopped belonging to the people involved. It became communal property. Everyone felt entitled to an opinion, a theory, and a conclusion. And once a narrative reaches that point, it stops responding to facts. It feeds on momentum. Chrisean's attempts to shut the conversation down only made it louder. Not because she was wrong to respond, but because the internet doesn't accept emotional boundaries. It interprets them as deflection. Every stop talking about my child was heard by some as a plea and by others as confirmation that something was spiraling behind the scenes. By now, the original claim had mutated. It wasn't being repeated as a question anymore. It was being referenced as a situation, which is internet code for something people believe deserves investigation. And that shift is dangerous, because once the word situation enters the chat, everything escalates whether it should or not. Even casual observers started tuning in, sensing the tension without fully understanding the context. That's when stories explode beyond their original audience, when people who don't know the history still feel the weight. By the time this wave peaked, the family drama had officially crossed into something darker. Not because of confirmed facts, but because of collective fear and unchecked speculation. Reputations were being shaped by reactions rather than reality. Relationships were being judged by silence. And the most unsettling part wasn't the outrage. itself. It was how normalized it became. People spoke as if the conclusions were already written, as if the ending was inevitable, as if uncertainty itself was proof. By the time the noise settled into something quieter, the damage had already locked in. Not the kind that trends for a weekend and evaporates, but the kind that rewires how people see you going forward. This claim didn't just ignite outrage, it altered trust, and trust, once cracked in public, never heals the same way. The conversation stopped being about what was said and became about what it meant. That shift is dangerous. Meaning is subjective, emotional, and impossible to control once the internet takes ownership of it. People weren't waiting for clarification anymore. They were building conclusions and decorating them with certainty. Public perception hardened in subtle ways. Fans who once defended Chrisean without blinking began sounding cautious, not hostile, not dismissive, just careful. They added qualifiers to their support, speaking in hopeful language instead of confident statements. "I believe her." But became the most repeated sentence across timelines. That but did more damage than any direct accusation ever could. Brands and industry watchers noticed immediately. Nothing loud happened, no announcements, no public distancing. Just quiet hesitation, silence from potential collaborators, pauses where conversations used to move quickly. In the entertainment world, unresolved narratives involving children are radioactive. Nobody wants to be attached to uncertainty, especially when the optics are this sensitive. Family relationships didn't escape unscathed either. What was once framed as messy but familiar family drama now looked reckless to outsiders. The line between personal conflict and public harm felt crossed, even to people who had previously brushed off the chaos as entertainment. When family arguments escalate into claims involving a child, the audience stops seeing personalities and starts seeing consequences. Karlissa's role in the aftermath became more complicated than the initial outrage. Some people doubled down on criticizing her, saying certain statements should never be made publicly regardless of intention. Others reframed her as someone who said too much, a label that sticks far longer than being wrong. Once you're seen as someone who overshares at the expense of boundaries, every future comment gets filtered through suspicion. Chrisean, meanwhile, found herself in a position she's rarely been in before. Not fighting trolls, not clapping back at haters, but navigating a narrative she couldn't joke her way out of. Every response after the initial fireback was scrutinized for tone, timing, and intent. Too emotional looked unstable, too calm looked coached, silence looked guilty, speaking looked strategic. There was no safe move left. That's the paradox of viral controversy. Once the internet decides something feels serious, the subject loses control of interpretation. Every action becomes evidence of something, even when it's just survival. The wider audience began reframing the entire saga. Moments that once felt like chaotic entertainment were now revisited with discomfort. People questioned whether the mess had gone too far long ago, and nobody wanted to admit it. The narrative shifted from "this family is wild" to "this situation is concerning," and that change is permanent. Commentary channels kept the pressure on, not by adding facts, but by amplifying uncertainty. Every quiet day became a headline. Every lack of update turned into speculation about behind-the-scenes intervention. Ambiguity became the content engine, and there was no incentive to shut it down. The story fed itself. Even supporters who wanted to protect Chrisean struggled to do so loudly, not because they stopped believing her, but because defending someone in an emotionally charged situation involving a child feels risky. Silence became self-protection, and when defenders go quiet, the narrative tilts further out of balance. What made this aftermath so unsettling was the absence of a clear resolution. No definitive statement closed a loop. No authoritative voice stepped in to reset the conversation. Just lingering tension and unanswered questions floating in public space. The internet hates unresolved endings. It fills them aggressively. This moment marked a shift in how this entire family is perceived. The chaos no longer reads as harmless drama. It reads as volatility. And volatility scares people more than scandal. Scandals fade, volatility sticks. Reputations don't always collapse. Sometimes they erode, slowly, quietly, through hesitation, distance, and doubt. That's what started here, not cancellation, but complication. And complicated public figures don't get the benefit of the doubt the way they used to. What happens next will matter more than anything said so far. The next comment, the next silence, the next attempt to move on. Every move will be measured against a higher standard than before. One shaped not by facts, but by fear and perception. This story isn't over. It hasn't reached its climax. It's in the uncomfortable middle where the audience is no longer entertained but deeply invested. Where people stop laughing and start watching closely. And when the internet watches closely, it doesn't do it out of patience. It does it out of expectation. This claim didn't just spark outrage. It matured the drama into something heavier, darker, and far less forgiving. All right. Before you scroll off acting like this wasn't one of the most uncomfortable internet moments we've seen in a while. Let's be real. Stories like this don't wrap up neatly. They don't end with apologies and peace signs. They sit, they simmer, and then they resurface when everyone thinks the dust has settled. This wasn't just a wild claim and a heated response. This was a fracture that exposed how fast family drama turns into public fallout when the internet gets involved. Now I want to hear from you. Did Karlissa cross a line that should never be touched, no matter the intention? Or did Chrisean's reaction pour gasoline on a fire that was already burning? Was this reckless talk, misunderstood concern, or something that should have never left a private conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate is not ending quietly, and the comment section is where the real tension lives. And don't tap that like button politely. Smash it like it owes you money, like it borrowed your hoodie and never gave it back. Like it just said it's not that deep when it absolutely was. One click tells the algorithm this conversation matters. If you're not subscribed yet, fix that immediately. Scandals don't schedule themselves. They pop up unannounced, emotionally charged, and ready to spiral. And when they do, fame flaws is where the noise gets stripped down and the real damage gets exposed. Because today it's a shocking claim, tomorrow it's silence. Next week it's consequences nobody expected. This cycle never stops, and neither do we. Stay alert, stay skeptical, and remember, when everyone suddenly goes quiet, that's usually when the next headline is loading. This is Fame Flaws, where the fame shines bright and the cracks show even brighter.